Going live. Let's see. I don't know which is the best way. It says going live. I have my lights there, but I don't know how to write that. I have it. It says Havana Syndrome. But again, like a mirror, maybe I wrote it backwards because it's supposed to be Havana Syndrome, but it's like it's backwards. So I don't know, Havana. Maybe if I do it that way. Oh, okay, if I do it that way. Havana Syndrome. I wrote it this way, but it's backwards or something, so there's Havana Syndrome. And I write it as just because I can't imagine being a target individual before that. Can you imagine trying to explain to people what it is that that lighting's a little funny. Can you imagine being a TI before it? That's still a little on the bright side, isn't it? Before Havana Syndrome, what it is that they have to explain to people that our government decided to use as guinea pigs, for lack of a better term. We're just used as guinea pigs. I guess that'll work. And the government has done this to people whenever there's a brand new corporation, a pharmaceutical company, or even our military wants to try, like MK Ultra, and it's always the same thing. It's always radiation. In Iowa, they did this to the girls. It was called the oatmeal girls experiment, because they would give it oatmeal to girls in school, and Quaker Oats offered, yeah, feel free, use our oats, and put iodized, uranium or some kind of radioactive stuff in the oatmeal just to see the effects of radiation, and it's just, they have a tendency, our government, and I don't know about other governments, Russia and China, I know that they've experimented, but you think with the internet, with all this stuff going on, you think, and people are able to talk, you think they would try to calm it down. You think they would want to do some PR, genuine PR stuff to try to make it look like, no, we are learning from our mistakes. Bill Clinton in 1995 had a news conference, admitted he put this bioethics group together, and they came out with this big old thick binder explaining and apologizing for the experimentation on American citizens, soldiers even sometimes, but sometimes just citizens. And you would think, it's like Bill Clinton was saying, and good for him for saying, you know what, this was horrible back then. Even for the days, by their standards, it was horrible. And now it is so horrible. Now we know, and may we never do this, never again. And then President Obama, again, to his credit, in 2008, at the start of his administration, put together another bioethics commission with about 10 or 11 people, or 12. Some from the NIH, Dr. Fauci's wife, Dr. Christine Grady, who's a brilliant lady in her own right, was part of that commission. Amy Gutmann from the University of Pennsylvania, the president of the University of Pennsylvania, now known for the Penn Biden Center. She helped affiliate and got some money from the Chinese to help that. They have the Penn Biden Center also. I believe it's in Shanghai, in China. I forgot the name of the capital, or one of the main cities. I forgot. I just went blank. Anyway, Amy Gutmann, not the RT television Amy Gutmann or Goodman. Amy Gutmann was the president of the University of Pennsylvania. And another person who is, I think, a very distinguished I guess a scholar, John Marino. I haven't read his books, but he's got a book on experimentation. Shock, the horrible results of how our government used to experiment on people, and he was on the board, John Marino. Now, these are brilliant people, and it's great, wonderful that these people. He was also that same guy was also a consultant on, of all things, the Bourne movies, Jason Bourne movies, like the Bourne Legacy or the Bourne Identity. Where a soldier takes this biological stuff and becomes amped up, becomes a super soldier. And they consulted him, and I don't know if he had part of a screenplay or what, but it was just the idea of using the super soldiers and becoming amped up with medications and pharmacological, and changing the DNA and again, turning people into monsters. That's what the movie is. And then he becomes he realizes who he used to be, David Webb, and just the horrificness of the character of the people in the CIA, and how these intelligence agencies, what we call the Illuminati. If you're an Illuminati believer, these are the people at the head of the intelligence agencies, and most of them are people we have never. Some are people we've heard of. So a lot of them are people we wouldn't recognize if they walk down the street or even were on TV. We wouldn't know their names. But it's aghast, fucking just the whole idea. Forgive me for I can't imagine they did this to me in my own hometown of Dallas. Not Texas, but Oregon. Little conservative, religious, drain the swamp Dallas. The whole idea of thinking when you're 30 years old, that I should have the power and the authority to play God with these children and babies, and whether it's taking away their oxygen when they're fighting for their life, like in the support study at the NIH, that is taking preemies without the knowledge of their parents mostly, and taking and screwing around with the actual the oxygen data, changing the pulse oximeter so that people won't be able to. The doctors and nurses wouldn't be able to tell which is the correct stats for the pulse oximeter for the oxygen. And different universities, the University of Alabama was the main school. I believe Duke was another one. I think Yale, but the University of Alabama was the head. And 1,300 families, 1,300 babies were part of the study to see how much oxygen, how much can they play with babies' oxygen, how many live, how many die, how long do they last. I mean, science is so wonderful, but who's going to sign up to be part of that? Who's going to, the one chance that you have on this life and this planet, who's going to want somebody making that choice for them? A doctor or a nurse or a government agency or any person who thinks it's okay to do this, but they evidently do here in America. America lecturing other countries about human rights is a laugh. It is the biggest laugh. And I hope I hope China finds this, and I hope they put it out there. I hope, because I'm sure China does have its own, but for America to wag its finger, being the richest nation, and yet doing this and ignoring their own 9/11 first responders with the never forget. And it's just like, when you are a TI and you do a little bit of study, anyway, there's what's weird when you have V2K, and for people who don't have V2K, this sounds ridiculous. It's like the idea that our government would actually, just like in those movies where they got the crazed expression, the wide-eyed, the government's implanted chips in my tooth, or in my brain. And it's like, Anne Jacobson is one of the biographers for, like, she did one on the Pentagon's brain, one on Area 51. And they allowed her to talk, and write this stuff, kind of like Dr. Robert Duncan does. And she just simply admitted, yeah, it's science fact now. DARPA actually does put chips in soldiers, in their brain chips. Not all of them, I'm not saying that, but they do experiment. They literally couldn't give a sweaty rats. And it's abominable. And I was a person who I thought the government was, I never had our own in Dallas. I thought everybody at sea, I didn't know a lot of people, but they were pretty good people, I assumed. And police, hospitals, doctors. I didn't have any enemies, and yet never got in trouble. But I thought they were pretty good too. But I did know from 15 on, when I was after high school and Bible college, that I had a chronic constant side pain. Chronic. And it just over time started to develop. And I would have never, ever thought that I was a subject. I just knew I was a chronic side pain. And sometimes doctors can't figure everything out, They don't know everything. They can try, send you to specialists, and hopefully somebody there. But in one way it's good is that with V2K, voice to skull, and I don't even know why they call it voice to skull, because what the K stands for, I think it just might as well be voice to kill, because that's the ultimate intention, is to have negative, derogatory, subliminal speech through different frequencies. It's just what it sounds like. You can hear it, but a person standing next to you wouldn't be able to hear it. It can bypass the cochlea, and kind of like bone conduction sounds where you can, and it just sounds like a person talking to you, like a regular, and you can detect it. It's not a booming, loud voice, but somehow it just does, reverberates, and it's like these frequencies bounce off inside your head and against the skull, and you can hear it. It just sounds like a normal person talking. You can make the words out. But for most people who've never heard of this, it just sounds kind of nutty. Most people are not aware of this technology. They just know that they've heard of Havana Syndrome. Now, I can't imagine what being a targeted individual was like. Harlan Gerard, Eleanor White, these people that were TIs before 2015, when it was all in the news, And finally, people got to realize, our government's got some weird, freaky weapons. There's weapons in existence we've never heard of. It's not just guns and missiles. It's crazy, weird, satellite-based. What Reagan used to call in the 80s the Star Wars system, using satellites, and like the Israeli dome as a protection. They can use satellites and knock things out of the sky, and but using that same satellites to hit individuals. There's a debate as far as the technology, whether people need receivers, receiverless, receivers or implants. I know for me, I have what they call a biometrics, but there's been a lot of people who have gone who have had x-rays and have found implants too. Now, for people who think that's nuts, it's not nuts. They've actually found them. They have them on x-rays. I know when I went to the hospital here in Salem and I asked for the CD, I got my CD of my operation after falling out of a window because of their shit and having to learn to walk again. They gave me the CD and it's supposed to show the surgery and all this stuff. But whenever I try to put the CD into a DVD player or my Xbox 360 or the new one, it just won't allow it to play. And that's part of what they call electronic harassment. And I get that scores. I mean, you get this electronic harassment where it messes with your lights, could be something as cheap as your video games. But they do it. And they pay people to come in shifts, I guess, to do this to you, to drive you nuts. And then Some people down the block, or it could be neighbors, and they react in a way to hopefully you can freak out, that you'll freak out in them. But I have had that, but for the most part, I just ignore them. I know what's going on with it. Yesterday, I went to go get just medication, went downtown, and they had a couple blocks at the bus terminal saying that, sealed off. There's about 5 police cars, and claiming there was a bomb threat or something. And so I was out there having a cigarette at the bus terminal, and my phone was, it says no, offline. My phone wasn't working. There was no internet. So I don't know if that's their protocol of what they normally do in those situations. But anyway, that's what happened to me. Hey, Tanya, how are you? To you and your mom, to all TIs around the world. Yes, I hope there is some more stuff. I've seen a few more new things, Tanya. I see Wayne once in a while puts a video up. So I come in and say hi to him once in a while, and in Australia there. And I normally get about the same 8 to 10 or 12 people. Now there's supposed to be, I don't know how many thousands or millions, and some of them, I'm just thankful for all of them. Anybody that puts videos up there, any of them. And I there can be some that are just, I just assume that they are real. Now there might be some that maybe aren't, but I don't get into that game of, who is and who isn't. I just, I remember one time going into a chat room, and they were doing this for, I don't know, I just happened to come in, their chat was already going for an hour and a half. And they were getting bored, and they were just saying, how, is this helping any, what are we doing this for? Are there any TIs that actually come into this chat? And one of the people in the chat, or the main side, we're doing it for disinformation. And it's like, oh. And it's like, then I just kind of walk in and just said, hello, I'm here. And it's like, and then, no, I don't know if I did say that to that or to another. But anyway, I think after a while, they pay these people to just pretend and get information or disinformation to spread. And again, it sounds so self-centered and ridiculous to the everyday because it is. The idea that they have a fusion center and the government would use you as a guinea pig to see how their surveillance technology using biometrics, whether you call them implants or biometrics sounds better. Implanted biometrics, which is technology that is used like with pacemakers, and it can tell the vital signs, and it can tell the heat, warmth, and deliver pain signals. And if you are a person with Havana Syndrome, which is more or less our government's attempt at an alibi to blame it on Cuba, blame it on Russia, blame it on China. We're not the bad guys. Those guys did it. It's like the person who farted and tried to blame the neighbor or something, Or, yeah, it's somebody else. It's like, finally, after 4 or 5 years, the CIA guy, Mr. Burns, William Burns, I think his name was, admitted, he was the ambassador to Russia for the U.S., admitted it's not a foreign adversary. We now know it's not a foreign adversary doing it, which is great. He admitted it. But now the common sense 60 Minutes question would have been, well, if it's not them, who is it? Because there's only one other group. If it's not a foreign government or a foreign adversary, then who else is it? Because there's only one other group out there. It's the United States own government. Because that's when you say it's not a foreign adversary and you admit that this is really happening to people. Some people took it that when he admitted that it's not real, as far as saying it's not a foreign adversary, that wasn't real. They took that to mean that the weapons weren't real. And it's like, no, the weapons are real. It takes 2 minutes or 5 minutes to look it up. They can textbooks. There's pictures of this technology. there's textbooks on this stuff. There's people who have been using it for the last 50, 60 years. Russia's been using it. America. This China. They got their own programs. One of the guys who started it was a guy named Puharich. I know Andrea Puharich or Henry Hank, whatever, but I think his name was Andrea Puharich, Puharich. But then he liked to listen in. He was searching. He was trying to look into Uri Geller and parapsychology. And a lot of this had its breaking point with Stanford Research Institute and Russell Targ and remote viewing, parapsychology, trying to see what psychic stuff was real, what wasn't. America was competing with Russia to, after the Nazis in 44, 45 and looking into their parapsychology, Nazi stuff. They started competing over different telekinesis, ESP. I think Russell Targ even made like a video game trying to practice ESP. Now, when you're a person who is, if you're religious, you want to study to see, and you're into apologetics, trying to prove, doctrine or God or the soul. I spent years on those things. So I'm able to do that to my extremely doubtful satisfaction. So it's like, yes, I got all my doubts out of the way to where I could prove this stuff to my mind. I think the anthropic cosmological or the design argument, the anthropic principle is actually the alternative, but it seems that's more wacky. It's like kicking up a multiverse, invent a multitude of multiverses in order to explain the one universe you know about, because this one looks designed from the Big Bang, but it's like, if it is, it looks overwhelmingly designed from the Big Bang, even with the Big Bang, and boom, it was ordered in such a way where carbon-based life, which is so impossibly improbable, it happened anyway. We're here. So their tautology is, well, we're here and we wouldn't be here to talk about it unless it happened. So that proves it happened. And it's like, what? That's a tautology. Anyway, so I think the designer, that's my belief. Either, and they're both take an act of faith, either a designer or a multiverse, which is millions, if not infinite amount of universes in order to explain the one universe we do know about. So anyway, I go off on these little tangents on theology and philosophy. So, how are you doing, Tanya? How are you doing? Are you still getting just the same old stuff? I saw that Kyle put one up just a little bit ago. I think a few days ago. So it was good to see him. And I saw Wayne. I only get about 9 or 10, maybe 12 TIs. I don't know how many there was originally, because Robert Duncan interviewed with Tyrone Dew, said it originally was 2,000, and then in his book, he said it was like 10,000. So it must have, but I know when it comes to, they limit the exposure of how many TIs either see my stuff or that I can see their stuff, because they really try to control all aspects, even if you see different chat rooms, and they try to limit the exposure of us getting huge amounts of groups. Thank God for Ella Free and Dr. Matt. And Meigs, and I haven't seen, it's been a long time, but I'm just so glad they had that Portland rally. And for me, it's been since when I was 15, I had my operation, and then like a year or so, a few months later, actually, but I started getting it and literally went for 30 years. And you're just praying every day, Lord, tell me, either heal it or tell me what it is so I can get a doctor. 30 years like that. And I was thankful that they gave me pain meds, very thankful. But to realize after getting whatever they called it, V2K, and who gets V2K? Something cool. I didn't know the name of it. I just knew somebody was messing with me, and I could hear something, voices or people talking under the floorboards, and they were talking about me. And you didn't know what it was. Just like, and then you realize, oh, this is what happens to people who are called targeted individuals. And voice to skull and all that constant side pain ended up being a biometric, which is a sharp pain that they zap. They can zap you parts of your heart or your brain or parts of your toes and your feet. And we're the guinea pigs, just like soldiers are. Our government, and also they also set up these gate watchers, the watchers that are supposed to watch out for corruption, watch out and protect the civilians. So they have the bioethics department for the government, and they might do some good. I don't know. They're very smart people, but as far as stopping or voicing anything, they know very well what Havana Syndrome is. But they allow people to talk at these meetings, but they don't stop it. They're the one. It's our government that created this crazy technology that most civilians and citizens doesn't even realize it exists. They don't believe that this technology exists yet because it's not been declassified. They're talking about Elon Musk and the computer brain interface. So they'll talk about it, and artificial intelligence is getting scary. We're going to take a break for a while. Well, it's because it didn't last as well, and they're hoping that more of us just keel over. So they either don't have to pay us or admit to their crime that they're still doing it. It's just an embarrassment, and it's bad for the people that want to drain the swamp on one day, but then you find out while they're chanting "drain the swamp," they're actually taking money for torture. To torture people, hoping they screw up. It's like in Nashville, they had that lady, I think she was a transgender lady. She went in and shot up a schoolroom, and then the police went and shot her up. There's a manifesto that she had written, much like Myron May had written that manifesto. And I think the FBI won't reveal it, because my guess, and a lot of TIs think a lot of these shootings could be because they're writing manifestos saying they were targeted. Or you'll see even on the news them using words like they were targeted, or they went nuts because they were targeting somebody at work or at school or blah, blah, blah. And it's almost a tongue-in-cheek thing about the target individual program, like targeting, we can say, and people don't realize they were actually doing this. They're using RF radiation, radiation, to see how long it takes, how long they can torture people. And even after the apology, even after putting the bioethics commission up, they're still doing it. And it's the same people. They put these people up there to protect us, but in reality, they're the ones protecting the government. It's and one of the people for those 8 years was they seem to be more interested in protecting the government, and we've seen that during the pandemic too. It's always about whatever the government says, believe it, and if you don't believe it, then you're a nut job. If you start saying, like during the pandemic, that it's a lab leak, well, you're a conspiracy theory. You're a conspiracy nut. But now it's a weird thing, because now even the FBI admits it looks like a lab leak, but we already know that our FBI is corrupt. And so just because they say something, it's like masks. They're trying to say now the CDC says that masks don't help, that they're bad. And it's like, so people are using that as proof. And it's like, well, the CDC, why would you trust the CDC? It's all they did is lie and cover up. But now they say something that you want to believe, that masks don't help. But I think common sense would say that. That's why doctors and nurses wear masks during operations, because they prevent things from going into your mouth or nose. As far as eyes, that could be an opening, but if you wear goggles or something, but it just seems to be common sense. It's unless they treat microbes and viruses like microwave rays, where those things can go through, even the Earth's core, that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going off on little tangents. So I'm just so glad that for 30 some odd years, I think I go off on these little things about, because I studied, well, religion, I studied for the ministry, but that was like, again, 30 years ago, I don't know enough about heterodyning. I wish more people would, but it seemed like anyway, I'm just glad that the Havana Syndrome is out there and people can look and realize that this stuff is real. And I have a couple books here that I would encourage. Here's one, The Invisible Crime by Michael Bell, Fitzhugh Bell. And he's a TI. He's got 2 books. And here's another one that's really good, The Electromagnetic Revolution and Federal Targeted Individual Program by John Phillips. Everything is looking backwards here, but Contributing Corporations and Federal Agencies in Idaho. So it's got the patents and different, this stuff is getting out. I mean, it was on Amazon. Most of the books that I got from it's on Amazon. But again, I don't know if it's from them or if the Fusion Center has all this stuff. And because I noticed I had one from Forwood, Anthony Forwood, on gang stalking, and it looks like the printing job was kind of crappy as far as the bibliography. So I don't know if it's, they do try to control what you see. What they do everything to see your reactions, because of the surveillance stuff through the eyes and ears and, what they can see on their computer screen, and their ability to control through blackmail or money the surrounding people to see if they're willing to do it, to see if the government is that, and the people behind this are that powerful, to see the reactions of you, the target individual. Because you can hear them through V2K, no change, like through the V2K, if there's a change in vitals or a change in the brainwave activity, whether EEG stuff or, but they're trying to do that, and they throw these gang stalking scenarios, normally negative and stress inducing, to see how you react, to see if they can control other people to do things they normally wouldn't do because of money or blackmail, or maybe they get, who knows, people with criminal records to knock time off their sentence, or, or money, like those little cards people talk about, gift cards, to see if they can do it, and to get even religious people or people in churches to do with this kind of behavior. Thinking that they're, but then the next day talk about draining the swamp. So it's ironic. So anyway, I hope you're doing, Tanya. I hope you're doing okay. I saw some people I get that are TIs. I get some of their stuff, but I know PAX International, they got some good stuff out there. That's a great website, I think, PAX International. And I get some stuff on targeted justice that I look at. They got books and ebooks that I would encourage people to look at. And some of this stuff is just free that they'll allow you to look at and download, including shielding stuff to protect you from some of these rays. For me, something that has helped is strong magnets. Various neodymium magnets can help against some of the effects of the painful effects of directed energy weapons. It can alleviate something. I think PAX International kind of said some of them are a little stronger, like the 400 or 500 area, as far as pull strength. I have one that's like 600 pounds pull strength that I use for, but I would encourage people to look at that and just try out some things and see what helps you, whatever it does. The main thing I've noticed about this program is that it's intended to try to take away your emotions and your sense of self. and to see what you as a person, what you do to try to build yourself through positive um, reinforcement, prayer, meditation, what you do personally to combat this, prayer, meditation, friendships, going to, sports, fun things that uplift you. And they encourage you to fight it with positive, your friends, or there's information out there like to fight it with positive reinforcement, prayer, music, anything that gets you excited, positive, sports or something, or prayer. A lot of it's religious, spiritual, and I think that's great. But the thing is, a big part of this program with religious scripts that Robert Duncan was talking about is these religious scripts. They will use the religion in a negative way. They'll like deny yourself, pick up your cross, and everything is they'll use Bible verses to punish you or make you use shame, guilt, and fear, especially shame, guilt, and fear, to tear you down and reduce your ability through directed energy weapons or biometrics to hit you in the heart. And that feeling of self, that feeling of your emotions, your center of who you are as a person. I know I've experienced that over like 30 years, to where that very center of your emotional self, your emotions, you can't reach. It's almost like they're through biometrics. That must have been where they put the thing. And through radiation or pushing a button, they block it. They block it to where you can't feel in that area, except maybe just a few, like a diameter, and then you can start to feel your normal emotions. It wasn't until, literally 30 years, but I've had 7 times where they turned it like almost like a radio knob, and suddenly it felt normal. It felt great, and I could feel right here. I could feel my emotions. I could feel that part of my body, my heart area. I could actually feel it. And I thought, well, maybe it's healed. But actually what it was is that the biometric, they've always had it on. They've turned the knob, so to speak, or flipped a button, and they've been putting continuous pressure, whether a low frequency hertz, just a constant electronic bzzz. And it's so at first unnoticeable because it's low ELF, low frequency, extreme, low frequency pressure, radioactive, just constant. And then once in a great while, like every year and a half or 4 years or something, they just turn it off and you feel normal and you feel wonderful. It's like, oh, I can feel it. It's like, and it's like, that's what it's like. Wow, that's what it feels like. Whatever, you're just thankful. It's like, God, did you heal it? Or did my medicine work? Did something? And you're just so thankful. But then the next day or 5 hours later, then it's back. They come back and you're wondering, what the hell is it? What is it? And then I didn't know what it was at the time. And then you find out you got V2K target individuals, and it's like, oh, so the whole time they're literally pushing, using this radiation, like turning a radio knob, and they can turn it up and turn it down, just like your V2K. It could be negative talk, almost subliminal, to where you barely hear it. But if you're still alive after 20 years or 30 years, they turn the volume up, and now it's audible to you. It's V2K. You can actually hear people talking, normally in a negative way. So normally, most of the time, it can be just negative stuff, subliminal. But if you're alive after 10, 20, 30 years, they raise the volume and becomes negative V2K, voice to skull, that are Navy made. Same with the pain thing in the head or the heart or wherever. They turn on the knob and puts this painful frequency, and just constant on when you're sleeping, whether it's work, school, doesn't matter what you're doing, eating dinner, constant. And then once in a great while, for whatever reason, they just turn it off and you feel normal. You feel, oh, there's that part that I normally ain't, I can meditate, pray, and they've had that ability to turn off. Didn't really need those pain meds all those years. I just needed to know, whether through the hospital or what, that I was used as a guinea pig, and all they ever had to do was turn it off. I didn't need extra something because I wouldn't have been sick. I wouldn't have been in pain. They literally put me in a guinea pig in some government program, Havana Syndrome program, and turn the knob in such a slow, subtle way that you don't even notice it until you wake up and something's a little different. And then a week later, months later, it's just a little different. It's painful, but it's hard to explain, and they just do it so incrementally smaller, and then sometimes they just crank it up and then double over pain, like Havana Syndrome, just boom, hits you in the head, hits you in the heart. And thank God for, as weird as it says, but for me, the V2K and Havana Syndrome being on TV made me realize what, for 30 years at that time, 37 years now, I'm 51 now, but that I know what it was. I know what was being done to me, what is still being done to me. And I saw the White House bioethics thing in 2011, 2012, where all those target individuals stood up and said, yeah, if you're a TI, stand up. And then 80% of the room stood up. And over 300 people wanted to give their vocal testimony of what was being done to them, but they didn't have time for that many people. So anyway, hi there, Herbert. It's good to see you, my friend. It's it's just getting off stuff on my chest. I kind of stuff I hope that would help people if they're going through a similar situation, but that's how it did with me. Just it's like they put a frequency, and we have to find shielding that fights that frequency. If we can find something natural or spiritual, or medication, whatever it is we use, sports or religious faith, spiritual, or just watching TV or playing games, video games, something that picks it, and they're trying to study us wirelessly to see how we react, and through negative pressures, and to see if they can control people and get them to do things that normally everyday people you'd think wouldn't be part of this: gang stalking, electronic harassment, these little skits they do outside where they act weird and act out of control to see how you react, to see if your vitals change and your brain waves, however it is. It's very high tech, obviously, but I can just say I'm just thankful that Havana Syndrome, it's our government attempt at an alibi to blame China for Russia, for hitting the FBI, CIA. Of course, there was a couple Canadians that were hit too, but it was only really Americans and a few Canadians. So doing about the same. That's what I'm hoping to, Herbert. Just hoping that this stuff the information's getting out there. I know that they're supposed to be doing a lawsuit with targeted justice. But I think I couldn't imagine. I'm just so thankful. Whenever I get down, I remember Havana Syndrome. And I remember we've got patents. And Fox News, Jennifer Griffin showed the patents on Fox News. It's like, how can and the CIA guy, Adam, who was patient 0, the first one that came down with Havana Syndrome in Cuba, was like laughing and just like, how can they say that this wasn't real? We've got the patents for it. We know it's laughable. It's totally laughable and an embarrassment that they did this. They're still doing this to people. It is such an embarrassing, laughable. And the worst part, they do some of this, even in churches, they'll get people that go to church to do this to people. And it's just like to torture people. And I don't know if it's to get life insurance, torture somebody. They think they're part of the in crowd because they're with City Hall folks or police or whatever, getting some of the higher, people in hospitals to go along with it, or churches. City Hall folks, or just regular everyday people. I guess if they think they're part of the in crowd, the torture crowd, the Torquemadas out there. But we don't need to do that shit. So I think, it's like the old, I have fought hard. We can finish the race. I think things are looking better for us. And I know with Havana Syndrome and being on the news every night for 5 years, I watched something just a week and a half ago about Havana Syndrome on Breaking Point. Look that up. So that was good. I hope, yeah. So I'll hope this is. Anyway, my friends, I'm going to be taking off. I got to clean. My mom's going to be here pretty soon, so I'm going to clean up and make her a sandwich. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys a little later. Okay. Okay. Bye, guys.